You never really know what true rage is until you wake, up to the smell of diesel and freshly cut wood, and realize they're pouring concrete for 28 luxury condos right where your grandfather planted his apple orchard in 1943. I mean, the audacity of it. Veronica Sterling, president of the Highgate Preserve HOA, in her pristine white Lexus with the personalized Community First plates, had waved at me just the day before like we were having some neighborly tiff over a compost pile. This was no tiff. This was an invasion. She'd forged permits, bulldozed 80 years of family history, and was building her $4 million retirement cash cow on the 47 acres I held with a clean, ironclad title. Her grand opening was a week away. My demolition crew. They were already scheduled, too. I'm Jake Thorne, 48, third-generation owner of the Thorne homestead, and a retired structural engineer. I moved back to this old farmhouse in Redwood Crest a year and a half ago, right after my wife, Sarah, finally lost her 4-year war with cancer. I came back here to figure out what comes next, hoping the silence of the pines and the smell of the old pasture would tell me something. Grandpa always said, "This land has plans. Jake, you just gotta be quiet enough to hear 'em." I was still listening. But all I heard that morning was the roar of a bulldozer chewing through my family's dreams. The Highgate Preserve is a gated community next door. 120 homes. The kind of place where the HOA fees could finance a small nation. That's where Veronica Sterling lived. Helmet hair, designer yoga, where that cost more than my entire truck, and a smile that made you instinctively check your back pocket for your wallet. She found me at the local coffee shop 6 months after I returned, slid right into my booth without asking. "We're concerned about your property, Jake," she started, all phony velvet sincerity. "It's become overgrown, attracts coyotes. Would you consider selling? We'd give you a fair price." I put my coffee mug down, a solid thunk. "It's not for sale, Veronica." Her smile, man, it froze like cheap frosting on a grocery store cake. "We'll see," she hissed, leaving with a vague threat about maintenance codes. 2 weeks later, code enforcement showed up, found nothing, and mumbled, "Start with those fancy gates next door, buddy." I let it go, figuring she was small-time power flexing, until I came back from scattering Sarah's ashes in the Rockies. I needed that trip, watching her become part of something impossibly big and beautiful. When I returned, my land looked like a staging area for a military coup. Survey stakes everywhere, bright orange tape fluttering like an invading flag along my eastern boundary. The surveying company out of Denver casually told me the Highgate HOA had hired them for a boundary dispute. I called Veronica. Her voice was pure honey again. "Oh, Jake, it's a formality. Our lawyer found discrepancies in the original plat. Don't make this difficult. Think of the community." I stayed calm. "There are no discrepancies. This is my land, clear title since '61. That honey-drip voice evaporated. "Then I suppose that's for the courts to decide." "Blessed day," she snapped and hung up. "Fast forward 4 months. I had my own surveyor confirm everything, my land, my boundary." She ignored the certified letter. Then, at 6:15 a.m., I walked out in my bathrobe with a steaming mug, watching 3 bulldozers, 2 concrete trucks, and 30 hard-hat guys ripping trenches through the pasture where Grandpa taught me how to drive. That smell, torn earth and raw diesel, it felt violent. I watched a dozer push over a massive apple tree, the roots snapping like heavy gunfire, and something cold and sharp went off in my chest. I found Marcus Sterling, Veronica's husband and the developer, in the site trailer. Golf course tan, expensive blueprints scattered on a folding table. He looked up, all friendly false cheer. "Jake, morning coffee?" I just said, "You're on my land." He didn't even blink. "Actually, check your facts. The HOA filed an adverse possession claim 2 weeks ago. This land's been in legal limbo since '98. We're just rectifying an old error. That's when I got it. Rich people don't break the rules. They just rewrite them faster than you can read the fine print, and then they dare you to keep up." Marcus knew the game. He knew the sheriff, Danny, was his Thursday golf buddy. He knew an adverse possession claim, even a completely bogus one, because Highgate Preserve didn't exist 20 years ago, only 5, creates legal fog. It clouds the title, delays enforcement, and while I was running out of money hiring lawyers, they'd keep building. The bet was simple. I'd run out of fight before they ran out of concrete. I drove straight to the city, feeling like I was losing my mind, holding Grandpa's old, mud-stained surveying journal. I saw my wife's face in my mind, weak but stubborn during her last chemo rounds. "You're the guy who fixes things everyone says are broken for good, Jake. Don't forget that." Right then, sitting in the dark, I decided this wasn't about stopping construction. It was about destroying the Sterling's entire scam so publicly they couldn't do it to anyone else. The next morning, I hired the best shark in the state, Amelia Reyes, mid-40s, driving a Tesla that made my Ford look like a garden shed, and a reputation for making opposing counsel weep. I walked her through the property, showed her the foundation trenches. She flipped through Veronica's forged claims versus my clear deed and stopped dead. "This is the most brazen land fraud I've seen in 20 years, she said. "We'll win. But the injunction hearing is 3 weeks out. They'll finish construction and start selling before we ever see a judge." My heart sank. "So we're screwed?" Amelia smiled, and it was not friendly. "In traditional court, yes. Good thing I'm not traditional." Back at the farmhouse, she explained the lis pendens, Latin for suit pending. "It's a legal hand grenade. It doesn't stop construction, but it poisons the title so badly no bank will touch a mortgage, and no buyer will risk their life savings. They could build all the condos they wanted, but if no one could buy them, what was the point?" She filed the suit right there on my kitchen table. Veronica's response was predictable. A cornered animal always strikes. She served me with a $500,000 counter lawsuit for tortious interference, claiming my lis pendens scared off buyers. The math was clear, a war of attrition. But they didn't count on my stubbornness or my free time. I spent days in the public library digging. On day 3, I found the pattern. Sterling Properties had pulled this exact land fraud in 3 other states: Nevada, Idaho, Texas, always resolving in their favor after the original owner ran out of money. I tracked down an elderly couple in Idaho, Mike and Carol, who lost their family ranch and their savings. When Mike answered the phone, his voice was hollowed out. "Son," he cried, "don't let them win. We lost everything. Please don't let them do this again." I promised him, my own voice thick. I promised I wouldn't just beat them. I'd burn their operation to the ground. Then came the low blows. All 4 of my truck tires were slashed. Then the real terror. My well pump died. The plumber confirmed it. Someone had poured sand down the casing, a deliberate act to poison the motor. It was $8,000 to fix, and I knew exactly who did it. 2 days later, Veronica showed up on my porch with a cash offer, $350,000 for a quick claim deed. She dropped the act entirely. "We do this the hard way then," she sneered. "Small-town heroes don't beat people like us, Jake. We have resources you can't imagine." I watched her Lexus disappear in a cloud of dust, thinking how wrong she was. Resources don't win. Desperation and refusing to quit do. My lowest point was seeing the local paper run a hit piece penned by Veronica, painting me as a bitter recluse hoarding land while families desperately needed housing. Strangers at the hardware store wouldn't meet my eye. I felt truly isolated, like the whole town had voted me off the island. But then, insomnia, that relentless enemy, did me a favor. At 2 a.m., digging through Grandpa's old boxes for the 10th time, I found a small, rusted lockbox. Inside, the original deed, some photos, and a letter I'd never seen. County letterhead dated 1997, addressed to my grandfather, Stanley Thorne. The letter confirmed that when developers first proposed the neighborhood in the late 90s, they requested a boundary change. Grandpa refused. The county reviewed everything and certified the original 1961 boundary, saying, "Request for modification denied. Matter resolved." Signed, notarized, official as death. I sat down hard, phone light cutting the dust motes swirling around me. This wasn't just evidence. This was a tactical nuke. Veronica's entire fraud rested on claiming the boundary was always disputed. This letter proved the county explicitly resolved it 27 years ago. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd lied to a judge and filed court documents about a settled issue. That's not mere fraud. That's perjury fraud on the court. The kind of thing that gets lawyers disbarred and people bankrupted. I emailed Amelia at 3 a.m. with the subject line, "Grandpa's insurance policy." She replied in 40 seconds. I told her the plan, sit on it. Let Marcus and his expensive lawyer, Sheldon Krause, testify under oath that no county review ever happened, that the boundary was always disputed. Then we drop the letter. Trap them in perjury. One shot, kill shot, no appeals. That's vicious, Jake, Amelia laughed. I like it. Over the next few days, we built the scorched earth doctrine, a 4-layer attack. We had our courtroom trap, and thanks to Amelia's paralegal, Trevor, we found the crack in their financial foundation. The Sterlings had used a shell company for title insurance, bonded with maybe 10% of the required funds. If the title failed, buyers would lose everything, and Marcus would face personal liability that would bankrupt 3 generations of Sterlings. Amelia filed the motion to freeze all pre-sale money in escrow, choke the cash flow until they drowned. Then came the media napalm. We gave all the evidence to Leo Vance, the investigative reporter, who tracked down Mike and Carol in Idaho and several others the Sterlings had crushed. His expose was timed to air 2 days after our hearing. Amelia was blunt. Once you're labeled a serial land fraud developer on television, you're done. Professional death by broadcast journalism. The courtroom was quiet, smelling of old wood polish and nervous sweat. Marcus sat rigid, Veronica beside him, their $1,000 suits trying to project confidence. Sheldon Krause opened, smooth as expensive bourbon, claiming decades of confusion and innocent mistakes. Then Amelia stood up. She quickly dismantled their surveyor's credentials, showed my GPS-accurate report, and then she called Marcus Sterling to the stand. Marcus swore under oath, voice reeking of false authority, that to his knowledge, the county never officially resolved the boundary question in 1997. He glanced at his lawyer, got a microscopic nod, and confirmed it was unresolved. Amelia walked to our table, picked up the single piece of paper, and the air seemed to stop moving. Your Honor, she said, her voice cutting the silence. Plaintiff's Exhibit G, a letter dated October 12, 1997, from the county planning director to Stanley Thorne. This letter explicitly confirms the boundary was officially reviewed, modification request denied, and the matter resolved. There was no error. There never was. I watched Krause's face drain of all color, his hand shaking as he read the letter. The judge, Helena Brandt, read it twice, her expression hardening from granite to diamond. She looked at Marcus, sitting exposed in the witness box. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice cold enough to freeze fire. You just testified under oath to facts contradicted by a government document from 27 years ago. That's perjury. She lifted her gavel and brought it down sharp as a gunshot. Preliminary injunction granted permanently. Construction ceases immediately. Adverse possession claim dismissed with prejudice. She wasn't done. I am referring Mr. Sterling's testimony to the district attorney for a perjury investigation. Outside, Leo Vance's camera was already rolling. I looked straight into the lens, thinking of Mike and Carol, thinking of Grandpa's orchard, and said, this isn't about me. This is about everyone they've done this to, the next victim they were planning on crushing. That stops today. The collapse was total. The HOA, exposed to personal liability, voted Veronica Sterling out in an emergency meeting. Leo Vance's investigation aired, the clip of Marcus looking terrified became a meme, and a for sale sign went up on the Sterling McMansion the next morning. Marcus Sterling's empire crumbled within a week, their company filing for Chapter 11. The half-built condo frames, the monuments to their greed, were dismantled, and the land was restored to native prairie. Watching those skeletal structures come down felt like watching a tumor being removed. I paid Amelia in full, even though she tried to refuse a large chunk, calling it pro bono justice work. I insisted. You earned every penny, I told her, especially the moment Krause's face went white. 6 months later, I hosted a barbecue for everyone who helped. Old Man Cyrus, Amelia and Trevor, Leo Vance, even the retired clerk who found the fraud filing. The kids ran through the fields where the bulldozers had churned the earth. The land became the Thorne Conservation Meadow, a non-profit community space. I established the Stanley Thorne Land Stewardship Scholarship for students studying law, engineering, or environmental science. I planted a new apple sapling where the old orchard stood, burying a box with Sarah's favorite poem and Grandpa's journal at its roots. I stood there, watching the sun drop behind the mountains, and finally understood what Grandpa meant about the land having plans. That evening, my phone rang. A woman from Montana, her voice shaking. "I saw your story," she whispered. "City Council is taking my family ranch through eminent domain for a private developer. They're lying about public use. I don't know what to do." I smiled, opened a fresh notebook, and said, "Start from the beginning. Tell me everything, because there is always another fight." And I learned the most important lesson. You don't need to be the biggest or the richest. You just need to refuse to stop. If you fought HOA tyrants, corrupt developers, or anyone who tried to steal what was yours, drop your story below. You are not alone, and your silence is exactly what they are counting on. Let's change that.